Trey Nelson is my guest today. Trey is an acclaimed commercial director with over 20 years of experience. He is known for his collaborative approach to filmmaking and his ability to create emotionally resonant work. Trey also serves as creative director for the nonprofit organization Cookies for Kids Cancer, where he has helped produce powerful films that inspire viewers to take action. His charity has a special matching fundraising event. So if you're listening to this before the 31st of December 2024, I urge you to click at the links I've put with the podcast at jordanbrady.com or in the show notes wherever you're listening and donate to this wonderful organization that's doing great things for kids with cancer. Helen, take it away.
It's time for Respect the Process, a short chat about commercial filmmaking. Here's your host, director Jordan Brady.
Oh, Helen, Christmas was 3 days of eating, just binging, but it was so fun with all of the family members. We started Christmas Eve at my father-in-law's. It's Mexican Christmas Eve, just so much love. And then Christmas Day, my grandkids and all of my kids in town over just family stories, laughing, presents, more food, of course. And then yesterday we went out to family yet again. So I am just plumb full in both my heart and my tummy. If you're listening before the 30th, I want you to check out myself and legendary DP Shane Hurlbut. On the Filmmakers Academy platform, we're going to be doing a live session where we talk about the collaborative process between the director and the DP, specifically around commercials. Now, Shane does a lot of movies, so I'm sure we'll dip into that too. And you can ask questions. There's going to be a live spirited Q&A at the end, so please check it out. That is the 30th. It's in the morning, but I'll put links in the show notes everywhere. I think, Helen, it's like $29. And if you really want to do it and you don't have the $29 because it's after Christmas, DM me and I got a special code. Speaking of codes and live, Brady 20 is what you use if you want to try the Magic Mind. I will be hopped up on the Magic Mind because just my journey with Magic Mind has seen me cut down on coffee and using the Magic Mind as a performance elixir. That's what I call it. It gets me in that flow state. And I heard him over on the Just Shoot It podcast, which I love that podcast with Oren and Matt. And they're now pushing the Magic Mind. They have a code. Pete Holmes, the comedian, has a code. But I'm just telling you, I'm in my second year of having it as a part of my daily routine. And on shoot days in the afternoon. So take it from me, the grandfluencer. That's a grandpa influencer. It's the mental elixir. It's a performance elixir. I just love saying that, a performance elixir that I use daily, and that should be enough to try it. Brady 20 is the code. Also, if you're listening before the end of the year, two more things before we get to the Trey Nelson interview. His charity, Cookies for Kids Cancer, that is, fights kids cancer, it's not pro-cancer, has a benefit where they're matching funds. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes as well. Or if you're at jordanbrady.com, watch the video that Trey and I talk about. It's a great chat. And they'll match the funds up until the end of the year. And then the last thing before the end of the year, our Filmmaker Retreat will be in September 2025. And Jordan, why are you talking about September 2025? We just barely got over Christmas. It's not even the end of the year. Well, because the Filmmaker Retreat at Joshua Tree, it's a couple $100 cheaper until the end of the year. And if you're a boot camp alum, you take off another couple $100. If you want to come back from prior years, you take off $500 because we always have people return. So it's just, I like that year-end last-minute tax write-off. After you give to your charities, invest in yourself. And if you have any questions about the retreat, please DM me. Let's jump on a phone call and I'll either talk you out of it or talk you into it, because it's an investment. And if you're not ready for it or it's not right for you, I don't want you to take the plunge. But if you're at a place where you want to get to the next level, you want to really define your voice as a filmmaker, it is for you. We've had only return filmmakers, no complaints, and everybody leaves re-energized. And a lot of us stay in touch, Helen. It's quite transformative. I think that's all I wanted to tell you about. If you want to take an online class, they all come with a consultation call with yours truly. Again, if you're hurting for money because you just spent it all on Christmas, DM me. I'll give you some sort of discount. We don't really have sales. I don't have time for that, but love to help you out. Okay, cue up the interview with Trey Nelson. Where are you in the world, Trey?
I'm in Massachusetts.
And the last time we talked about, because I looked at the notes, and it talked, this is where I want to kick off. You talked about changing your outlook from just doing the job to like having purpose in your work and in your life, that was a priority. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. I was also reflecting on the conversation that we had.
It was a good one, by the way.
It was a good conversation. It was a good conversation, and I think that what I took away from it was, you do ask this question at the end of the podcast of like, what is the most important thing, and I'll answer it the same way that I'll answer at the beginning of this conversation, which is know what your values are. Mm-hmm. If you know what your values are as an artist, and as if you don't even identify yourself as an artist, as a human being, it makes navigating this crazy place a lot easier. It helps you make decisions. It adds clarity. It provides wisdom within the context of making decisions. I was just thinking about all the things that have happened since we last spoke in July, and how my process of intention and purpose is informed how I relate to the people that I direct on set.
Well, that's a good segue.
Yeah, like
how has it changed?
Well, it's changed in the sense that I think that as a director, a lot of people look to us to have all of the answers. But I have started to, instead of having all the answers, I've started to hold more questions.
Well, stay curious. That's a great piece of advice for any director at any level. Stay curious throughout the process. And if you think, I'm just interjecting and get back to what you're saying, is if you think you know it all, that's where you're going to fail.
Absolutely. Be a living question mark, not a living answer. Like, to me, that is a great way to interact with actors, real people, if you're directing real people on set. For example, I did this airline spot, and we were working with real people. And I tried something like totally different. Instead of saying to these people, and there was a dozen of them, and we were running them through in one day, instead of saying to them, okay, this is what you're doing, this is what you're communicating, this is what you need, all the points that you need to hit, X, Y, and Z. I said to them, I actually asked them a question. I asked them, why are you here? Like, why are you here? Like, I started asking them questions. Why is it important for you to be here? And the answers that I got gave me a common language to communicate with them. And that's a really important thing to have when you're working with people that you've just met.
Whether they're performers or real people being interviewed. What, by the way, was money the main recurring thing?
No. It was totally different. It was wildly different between different people who worked in different departments at this particular airline. And what it gave me was, you know, it gave us a common safe space. Like I know that sounds like,
Mhm.
gobbledygook to people to, oh, let's create a safe space. But it's like really important to create a safe space for people on set, especially those in front of camera, whether they're working professionals or whether they're not, because the safe space implies they can take risks. They can be bigger than themselves. They can do things that are outside their comfort zone, which is really what you want them to do. And then secondly, what I said to them is what I want for them to be. Like, my intention for the project wasn't to make the best project possible. Yes, that is the underlying goal. But I knew that in order to achieve that, the thing that I needed to do was make them understand that I wanted them to do and achieve the thing that they wanted out of this. And if I could get them to believe that I also wanted that for them, then it was like, wow, that was magic. And I was using language that they had created themselves, not language that I had created.
That's a good one.
It was awesome. It was
Trey,
awesome.
I think you'd make a good cult leader.
Well on my way.
So let me just back up to safe space, because that is a word that you would hear at a yoga retreat, or
Totally.
People talk about holding space, creating a safe space. And I think really the last maybe 8 years, where at the start of the Me Too movement, those of us that wanted to do what we could to make it a safe space on set anyway, would acknowledge, we do at the safety meeting, that this is a safe space. No one's going to touch you weird. No one's going to make rude comments. And that's more on the crew side of things, but actors as well, and people in front of the camera, non-performers. So I think it's important that we do use that term and that we talk about it on this podcast, because I remember a woman on the show was telling me, I think she was a production designer. Yeah. Like during lunch every day on a long shoot, one of the guys on the crew would come up and just like rub her shoulders in the lunch line. And she would say, you can't just touch me like that. Now I'm going to an extreme example. I don't think that's where you were going with safe space.
No.
But that is a part of it.
Yeah, I think that there's different quadrants of a safe space. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like that example is like fucking horrible.
Yeah.
like to someone that would invade someone's like personal space and feel like they had the agency to do that without asking for permission or not even knowing the person. Gross, right? That's like for me, that's like not even like, it exists. I hope that I would never create a space like that on set or work with people on set.
Of course not. But I'm going to extreme for the example of that now, I think in 2025 is a given, right? That people don't touch people. You don't go up and just do that. You don't make rude remarks. You don't try to pick up on some guy. But equally as important, if not more as important, as that becomes a diminished reality, I hope, on your set, my set, we want everyone to feel free to creatively play. We want them to, like you said, be maybe a little bit heightened version of themselves for the camera. We want people to come up with, well, let me ask you this. You and I probably agree that when you create a space that is a fun vibe on set, not only do the performances shine, but everyone feels like they're part of something bigger and that they're contributing to this magical event, and that trickles onto the film. True or false?
Yeah. I think you're right. It gets back to the question that you asked me from the beginning, which was like, what's the purpose? What's the intention? Like, why are we all doing that? And I think a lot of people don't have the answer for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a lifelong search. The thing about being on set that's so magical is just like all of the strangers that are agreeing to like pull in the same direction. And some of them might be old friends, some of them might be new friends, some of them, like I said, might be strangers. So there's just like this collective pulling in the same direction of achievement in creating art that I think is, I played football, and we would get into a huddle, and then we'd say, hey, this is the play, let's go execute it. I can't think of another kind of like sport like that parallels like making films in the same way. It is like a huddle. This is the plan. We're executing art. Mm-hmm. And I love those two things about it. Getting back to the idea of a safe space, the only thing I can contribute to that is I deeply believe that the foundation and the environment in which you create as a person who's creating and co-creating whatever it is that you're doing is the important thing is clear communication with everybody of what you want, right? But also having enough space for other people to contribute to that co-creating idea. That to me is the safe space that you're creating. And when I have a conversation with an actor or something like that, like, what do you want? What do you want out of this? Well, shit, everybody's usually like asking the director, what do you want? And again, it's getting back to asking people really clear questions, getting the answers, and then using that language that's been co-created in driving whatever it is, the magic that we're going to capture. It's really worked. Yeah, you flip it, and it, to me, it's like, gosh, like it's so egomaniacal to think that I have all the fucking answers. I don't. I have some ideas and I know what tools to play with. But the thing that is so satisfying about the work that we do is the co-creation of it. Mm-hmm. And you can't actually co-create unless you actually get people to believe and buy into this is a safe space. Well, fuck, I could say that till my head is, blue and my face is purple. But you got to act on it. You got to create it, and you got to ask people questions, and you got to listen to them. And then it becomes a space. They'll tell you whether or not it's safe or not by their performance and by the way are co-creating with you.
I'm just processing all that. First of all, can you give us an example when you were doing this airline spot, which I'm on your website and I don't think I see it. A lot of your work.
It won't be there until next year.
Okay. So can you give us an example of an answer you got from one of these real people?
Sure.
What they wanted out of it and how you flipped it and directed them based on the language you created with them out of this curiosity phase.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say I'm talking to someone. I think one of the first people that I was speaking to was someone who worked in reservations. Okay. And someone who works on reservations is not the tip of the spear on an airline. They're often the people that solve a lot of problems.
Right.
The tip of the spear are the pilots. That's often the hero of the story of an airline story. But this individual was in reservations in Dallas, and I asked him, so why are you here? And he said, I want to be seen. I want to be the person who wants to be seen in reservations. We don't often get seen. We solve problems. We deal with really angry people. I want to be seen in that way. I said, that's great. You're in the perfect spot, pal.
You're in front of the camera.
You're in front of the camera. You're going to be seen. What else? Give me 3 words. Give me 3 words that help me help you be seen in the way that you want to be seen. What are the most 3 important values? I did use this word. I remember using this word. What are the 3 values that are really important to you? And he said 3 things. I can't remember them right now because I had 36 or 48 of them that were given to me on that day. But what I did is when I used those words back at him, it was a prompt that like let's just say he said, pride. That is a really important thing for me. That word pride means something to me. Now, if I had used a different word like honor, you've got honor. Remember the honor that you have for this. He wouldn't know what that means.
Right.
But this is what it all comes down to. You have to trust that the people that you're working with have all the right answers. Because they do, especially those in front of the camera. So when he used that word pride, and I needed him to be bigger, and I needed it to try another word or another sort of like prompt that required him to sort of like juice it up a little bit more, hold his spine a little bit higher, and project a certain emotion, I used that word pride. And it worked because he knew what it meant to him, not what it meant to me. That's why it was effective.
That's a great example. I don't know if I agree with you on everyone knows the answer better than we do, because I think we have the holistic view of what we're trying to accomplish, and I don't expect like everyone on the crew to have the answer that I need. I think they know how to execute their job better than I do, but I don't know that they have all the answers. So I'm wondering, A, you can push back on that, but B, when do you cut off the collaboration mode? Like if you have this, you're creating a safe space and you want people to contribute, does it ever get to a point where people are throwing out ideas and you have to rein it in and go, okay, whoa, everybody slow down. I'm executing this vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that happens all the time. I don't even,
you're not creating a free-for-all where people are throwing out shot ideas and have them say this, and what if she wears a dress that's long and made of chiffon?
Right. Love chiffon. To get back to the first part of it, does everybody have the right answer? I guess the only way, I think you have to, yes, it's within certain domains.
Yeah. And I may be too literal. Like my example of safe space was very literal.
It was. So I think it's about the domain that you're working. I think like creative domains and what domain you're working in. Like I know that my gaffer, like your example is like, I know that my gaffer is going to know how to technically execute something as a craft person better than I am. But if I can say to that person and have a dialogue with that person, which is like, this is what I'm looking for, can you give that to me? Great. You know, like they have the right answer to execute the thing that I want.
Understood. Agreed.
That dovetails into like what the second question. There has to be boundaries and rules to creating something. You have to have boundaries and rules. And what I do, and I'm curious to see how you do this and how other directors and collaborators do this, is I very clearly have a vision from the very beginning of what I want, lighting, performance. But like often when you're making commercials, it's like that is like you've got to have a vision and you've got to sell that vision, but it evolves so much. But hopefully those very clear lines, that delineation that you've drawn around the world that you want to create, everybody knows that they can come into that and bring what answers they have to solving the creative problems that we need to execute the vision. So it's sort of like a boring answer to it, but like it's the only way I know how to work, which is like, yes, everybody's looking to me for the answers. What I provide are like, hey, listen, these are the rules. These are the creative rules that we're playing with. Play within them. If you have something that kind of like steps over the line, let's have a conversation about it. But really, this is what I want, and this is what I execute. And that does create like known quantities for people, right? Like they know like that. I think that's really satisfying for a lot of co-creators, and because they're like, oh, I know what I can play with. I know I could paint with X, Y, and Z colors, or I could do X, Y, or Z things with props or wardrobe or things like that. It doesn't mean that you don't have tire kickers on your set. Like you got to have tire kickers, which is like on this podcast, I'm listening to myself. I do sound like a guy who doesn't hold a lot of questions and is like a living answer, but I really do try to hold a lot of questions and sort of live with a lot of questions in my life and not try to wait. I try to wait for answers from the world.
I think what you've described in the way that you set up your team to contribute is what I do best at the Tech Scout. On the Tech Scout, I take the keys through the story in story order. And pro tip, I have the boards printed out like one frame on a basically 8 by 11 sheet of paper, like huge, and put them on poster boards. So not the little ones, the board of accomplishment we have on set where we cross off the shots. I mean big. Why do I do that, Trey? So people's heads aren't down on a piece of paper and production doesn't have to print 15 copies that get thrown away. We just have the one copy. And sometimes and everyone's eyes are on me and the board. And so I take them through the story and I explain the story. And once I've done that at the Tech Scout, yes, walk through area. First of all, answer questions. Anybody have any questions about the story? And then I'll go back and say, this shot I'm imagining over here, but I'm open. This shot, I would love to look out those windows. And recently on a Tech Scout in a car dealership where we built the dealership from scratch in a defunct Porsche dealership, I said, that part of the corner of the building where the architecture slopes down, looks like a skate ramp, like Tony Hawk's going to drop in. That's never in this movie. And we're doing a bunch of spots. It's never in anything. That is a dead zone. So gear, video village, whatever you want. This shot, a little push in. Now, other than that, if the DP says we should lay the track down, lay the track down. If you want to get a 6-foot slider, get a 6-foot slider. I really don't care. Now, there may be times when it's, hey, we're going to lay down track. And I'm like, well, the slider might be quicker and we can reset faster and go in and out and do a series. But rarely am I telling, even art department, it's like, think of this area, what can go there? So I'm using the Trey method. What could make this feel more like a dealership? What's ubiquitous? Plants, balloons, a desk. And people then, I feel, are engaged and they feel that their contribution is worthy. Like they didn't do it all in. I remember one time a stylist brought the exact shirt that I wanted for an actor. It was a Western shirt with those little pearl buttons, right? Like like you'd wear line dancing, you and I. And the agency was like, I don't know about those buttons. And I said, okay, well, let's look at another option. And I was young in my career. And the stylist said, hey, I just want to express to you that you didn't really fight for what you wanted. You know, I went to 3 different malls to get that shirt. And just because one person said, I don't know if I like that, and you throw out, well, we could put them in a black t-shirt, like, that doesn't make me feel like all this work I did was worth it.
Mm-hmm. How did you manage that?
Well, I went back and said, because I'd said I would show a black t-shirt or whatever it was. I said, hey, here's another option, but I really think we should see this on camera. We should put the actor in front of the camera because it adds a little bit of pizzazz to the shot. And we ended up using the shirt.
Yeah, I have a
it was a lesson well learned.
Yeah, it's great because it I mean, that's leadership, right?
On her part as well.
Yeah, I was actually talking about her.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a learned moment, and her taking ownership of her department and standing up for the work that she'd already done on my behalf. Like, absolutely, dude, this is the shirt you wanted. Go fight for it. I loved it.
There's always a moment on set where, like, you might blink at the opportunity of executing the vision that you had, and you're going to have to fight for it. So don't blink. I love that. I love that example.
if you watch Commercial Directing Shadow Online, which is one of my courses at Commercial Directing Film School, Trey, you'll see dear agency friends asking about artwork that was already approved. And I go, I have one other thing that we didn't like at the pre-pro, and you're not going to like it today, but let's examine it, and you'll choose what we already have. And I just sat and wait. I go, I'll wait here in the village. So I'll show you, I'll respect the process of you asking, but I'm telling you, you're going to return to the choice you already made. And I was right. But it's like an 8-minute just not blinking.
Yeah. I'm going into my 24th year as a freelance director.
Wow. You're young.
And yeah, very. And I started off just, as a PA, and then have worked my way up and asked all the questions about, like, how does my art, serve me? And then eventually I had like this moment. It was a near-death experience. I got run over by a truck, and I was like, why am I doing this? And I started asking questions of, like, who am I in service of in my work, and how is it serving? And the answer that I got, and the answer that I cultivated and developed, was like to connect with people, and create art that connects. I think that what I've realized that is, I wouldn't call it an epidemic, but I think that I think for a lot of people who work in the industry, whether it's you're telling television show stories, whether you're telling commercial stories, or you're telling feature-length stories, there is certainly a lot of very impressive work out there. There's a lot of craftspeople who are out there doing work that is great and very impressive. What I don't see out there is work that is moving. I don't see a lot of moving work out there. And what does moving work mean? Moving work to me means work that connects in a way that has internal emotional movement for whoever is watching it. I think there's a lot of work out there, and I think there's a lot of impressive work out there. And I think a lot of impressive work is getting lots of awards. But for me, as a creator of art and as a self-identified artist, which took me a long time to accept that, I think the best work that I am striving to do and striving to create with everybody else that is creating it with me is something that's moving. And I think, how do we get there is a really hard question. I think it is a question that has to be held, and the answer often doesn't really come until like those magic moments when you're on set and you've created the space for something to happen. Sometimes it comes when you're not working, when you're sitting around waiting for the next job. How do you show up for yourself when you're not getting a paycheck? Right? Like, how do you show up for yourself when it's not transactional? Right? And how do you motivate to do the work? I think that's I heard this really awesome quote recently about labor. You are entitled to the labor. You're not entitled to the fruits of the labor. So the point that I took away from that is, like, you really better enjoy the work. You better enjoy the process, because the fruits of the labor are pointless. And it gets back to it's the journey, not the destination. And if you enjoy the journey, the longer the journey, the better. If you enjoy the destination, you want to get there as quick as possible. I agree. I don't know if it's that reductive for me. I think that part of the creative process is figuring out what it is that you love to do. And I think part of the figuring out of what it is that you love to do isn't, for me, it's not always the transactional part. Sure, I love getting paid for the work that I do, but in those times where I'm not getting paid and it's not transactional, why am I doing it? And I think that's a question that a lot of people need to ask themselves. I would say young people in particular, is like, why is it that you're doing this? Why is it that you're on this journey?
Well, for me, Trey, it's never about the money. It's about how much. Um, yeah, it's funny. I was writing a treatment last night and this morning, putting the finishing touches on it before we jumped on this chat. And when I started the treatment, I have a process of procrastinating. Like, I'll scroll. I got to clean my desktop. I got to set a rat trap in the backyard. I got so many things that I need to do. And I tell myself that I'm clearing my mind so I'm uncluttered and I can focus on this treatment. But I'm old enough to know that the procrastination is indeed part of the process. Like, I'm laughing knowing that I'm procrastinating, because when I finally sit down at the old keyboard, I'm going to knock this thing out and it's going to be awesome. I respect that I'm thinking about this project for 3 or 4 days, and then I'm going to regurgitate everything in the words. And talk about enjoying the journey. I know that the first draft of the treatment is not going to be it. And I know when I visually do the layout of the treatment, or in this case, I'm having someone do the layout, I know that the first draft, I'm going to want it to be done, but I know the journey says I'm going to have notes and my wife's going to proofread and say something doesn't make sense. Like, embracing that it is hard and there are steps and revisions is part of the fun. The feeling of frustration of writing is enjoyable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If you love editing, you love writing.
Well, one time a writer said to me, Jordan, writing is editing, editing, editing. And I said, you could have said that with just one editing.
That's good. I like that.
That's an old joke.
Have you heard of the three rocks, like analogy of time management?
No, what are the 3 rocks?
It's great. You have 3 big rocks. One, let's just say you have like I've got something for you. I'll show this to you. I've got this plastic boot that I picked up when I was at the State Fair of Texas last year.
For the listeners,
let's just say
it is a plastic. It looks like you could drink out of it. It looks like a cowboy boot with a handle. If I didn't know, I'd say it's glass, but it looks like it's a child size 8. Go ahead, Trey.
Very descriptive. So you're trying to fill this up, and this is your time in your life, or the time in, let's just say, a week. And you've got 3 big rocks. You've got some sort of like hard Scrabble rocks that are a little bit smaller, and then you've got like sand.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of people, if they were going to fill that vessel up, they'd start with sand. And the sand is the stuff that you're talking about, setting a rat trap, like doing all of this other stuff. And then the next step was like, maybe I need to make, lunch for my son, but he goes to school. You got to do that stuff. But I'm talking about like maybe some other things. And then by the time you get to the big rocks, there's no room in the container for the big rocks. And the big rocks are actually the things that you really need to get done in your life. So
that'd be the purpose-driven stuff.
Exactly. The stuff that gives you meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what I've tried to do in terms of like, recognizing my conditioned behavior as a human being and as an artist is I actually try to pick up the rocks first and put them in the container, and then fill it with sand and fill it with that small hard Scrabble stuff. And I find that I could fit everything in if I put the big rocks in first.
And the sand just trickles around the surface area that's been left and fills in the other time. It's
exactly.
It's flipping your priorities or getting your priorities in order with the big rocks.
Yep. Yeah. And you've got to know what your big rocks are in your life. I think that's the important thing.
Well, here's a segue. For the past 7 years, Trey has volunteered and consulted for Cookies for Kids Cancer, a pediatric cancer research charity. That sounds like the center of the Venn diagram between purpose and work.
Yeah, it's great. I've been doing it, I think I said for 7 years. It's very satisfying work because it's in service of, gosh, the most vulnerable of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kids who get cancer. This last year, I worked on it. I worked on a 7-minute video for a year.
Wow.
And that's not because I didn't know how to prioritize my big rocks. It was just there were a lot of big rocks to move around, and there was a lot of just sort of time management of other people's time that needed to happen. But what is
Cookies for Kids Cancer?
So it's a charity that raises funds for pediatric cancer research. I got involved with it because in a previous life, I had made a lot of food television, over 400 episodes of food television.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, a lot of it, a lot of tabletop work, a lot of food television work. And I don't do that anymore, but when I was doing it, I was called upon to direct a live event, and the live event was Chefs for Kids Cancer, which is thrown by Cookies for Kids Cancer, and it's an event in New York City where 30 or 40 of the top chefs in the world come and cook dinner for tables, and the tables pay X amount of dollars in order to raise money for
who are the chefs? Like your Bobby Flay's, or
we're talking. Over the past 7 years, we've had some of the top chefs in the world. We're talking, it's not food television chefs. We're talking like Michelin star chefs. We're talking about, it's not celebrity chefs. It's like, it's some of the names are escaping me, but like,
I'll put the link to Cookies 2024 at jordanbrady.com with the blog. If anyone's
awesome.
on Spotify or Apple Podcast, that's the 7-minute film you're talking about.
Yeah, that's one of them. I've made 3 or 4 of them, and we make one like every other year for the event, and we show the video at the event, and then we bring somebody up from the video to make a speech about why it's important to raise funding for pediatric cancer research. That, it's interesting that you bring that up, because it's my involvement in that charity really changed the.
Well, how really did you get involved in the beginning? Back up, tell us.
Yeah, I got involved.
Kids getting cancer is the one thing that makes me most question the existence of God, because I don't see, I don't know why I get why God invented flies, because they clean up poop. But when you talk kids getting cancer, it breaks my heart. And listeners, when you watch this video, you will be compelled to do something.
Yeah, so donate. donate money,
because
we raised, just to how I got involved was I was hired to direct the event. So it was like an Iron Chef style event with like all of these chefs. So we had multiple cameras.
That's the food. Food.
Yeah, exactly. So they brought me on, and then eventually I was folded into it, and in a way that now involved year round in fundraising and coaching and helping to tell the story of Cookies. But the thing about, to answer your question about pediatric cancer, it's like it doesn't make sense. I don't think there's any way to make sense of it. I think the only sense that it does make is it begs you to ask that question: why does it exist? And I don't have an answer for it, but what I do have an answer for is pediatric cancer, and the research that goes into pediatric cancer is essential to understanding how cancer for adults works as well. Mm-hmm. Often it just trickles down from adults. Like, you've got adults getting chemotherapy, and what they do for kids is they just give kids a lower dose of chemotherapy. And what that does to children, it destroys their bones. It may cause more problems than actually provide a cure. So what Cookies for Kids Cancer looks for and provides money for are researchers who are trying to less intrusive, so that the child can grow up and have a normal life. and as
That's
normal
heavy stuff, man.
as it can be.
Yeah. Really, I mean, just seeing those kids, and anytime a commercial for, say, St. Jude's Hospital comes on, I think you're not a human being if you don't take pause at that moment. If it doesn't strike you in your core and you go, oh my gosh, this is horrific. How can I help these kids? I'm going to stop complaining about setting rat traps. It puts everything in perspective.
I think it also gets back to kind of the point that I was making about the difference between being commercials, television shows, or movies that are impressive versus commercials, television shows, and movies that are moving. I think there's a big difference in that. And one reason why I make the videos that I make for Cookies for Kids Cancer and the documentaries that I make for it is that it moves people and compels them to a very specific action, which is to contribute. You know, I know
the call to action is strong. The call to action is necessary because people don't know what to do. People want to be told this is how you can help now. And I don't know what it does to the brain, but you go, oh, yes.
Yep.
I mean, otherwise it's a film and people go, oh, let's talk about it. Without action, there's not going to be progress.
Exactly.
And that's probably where your advertising experience helps the organization as much as your filmmaking.
I mean, that's an astute observation. I think the commercial work that I do, I think one of the best spots that I've done was one for Visit Fort Worth, which was a tourist 1 minute and also 30-second. And then the reason that I think it's so good is because it is both impressive and moving.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason it is and it was is because it was informed by my own lived experience. And I think that if you can create some art that has lived experience, I think there's so many young people out there who want to like achieve and strive for success so early in their life, but the reason they're not really sure why. I think I was in that place for a really long time, and it wasn't until I had a lot of lived experience is helped me answer the question why I do what I do. And I do what I do in order to connect with people. If it happens to, for example, for Fort Worth, get more people to visit Fort Worth, great. But if it also just gets people to say, gosh, I should give, more money to Cookies for Kids Cancer, great. And then that's another win for me in terms of creating art.
Trey, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about? I know you've done short films and documentaries as well. Our audience cares most about the commercials. They definitely care about Cookies for Kids with Cancer.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, like it's a privilege to have this time to talk to you, so I appreciate it.
Well, likewise. I appreciate you doing this. The show is called Respect the Process, and you mentioned that you would answer the same at the end as you did at the beginning. So here's how we conclude. What does respect the process mean to you, Trey?
I think the most important thing in order to respect your own process and respect the process of others is to know what your values are. I think it's really important to do that and spend time thinking about what your creative values are. Otherwise, the process is quite frankly a mess. Your values provide you a North Star to which making informed decisions, and hopefully some of those informed decisions have a little bit of wisdom to it.
Yeah, I know that I famously said I would do a commercial selling vape pens to orphans. I kid. You gave me a weird look there. But I wouldn't do, I haven't done like somebody had an NRA commercial, right? The National Riflemen's Association or whatever they're called. And while I'm not opposed to people owning guns or going hunting and animal population control or like home security and all that, it's like, no, that's not for me. That was an easy one. It wasn't even a no. It was like, no, that's not my bag, man. I don't like that organization. but knowing what you don't want to do and saying no to things defines you just as much, if not more, than what you say yes to.
For sure. I think it's important to say yes to a lot of experiences early in your career, because it's how you figure out, like, oh, maybe I wanted to be a director, but really I love what the gappers do. Or I'm super passionate about moving a dolly and laying track. It's like my favorite thing. I love it. The only way that you would know that is if you had that experience, right?
Or just being around it. I had a mentee on set who thought he wanted to direct, and at lunch on the first day, I said, "So what do you?" And he goes, "Man, I'm really interested in what the grips do. Like, the grips put in a hard day's work. They're always moving. They're part of a team, and they are kind of like a splinter cell, right? The grips, like, they kind of have their own language, their own world, and everything, and they get shit done." And the guy goes, "They get shit done." I go, "That's exactly right." And without him exploring and being open, I mean, bring it back to staying curious. I was so happy because I think a lot of people, young people, want to be a director because it's sexy, because you get to wear the scarf and, yell out orders and things. And if your heart isn't in it, it's certainly admirable to, do a hard day's work and contribute that way. Everyone on set is making a contribution that is necessary and appreciated. Is what I'm telling people.
Yeah, I think the ego thing is definitely the reason why I got into directing.
Well, that illusion you call fame.
It was. I don't know if I had much to say, though. And I think that it wasn't until having lived a lot and had a lot of lived experience that I was fortunate enough to have picked. It's so easy to quit in this industry. Over the past 4 years, it's given us every reason to quit. It's unreliable. It doesn't really cultivate much confidence and trust. So if you're in the industry for your ego, it's unlikely it's going to be very fulfilling, and it's probably not going to be very long, the career. So that's why I say you've got to be in service of something bigger than yourself.
That's great. I have one last bonus question. You got hit by a truck, and we kind of just glossed over that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to trigger you, but were you in bed for many months after getting hit by a truck? And
I was on set. It was 2014, August 20th of 2014.
Wow,
I was operating a camera in Roswell, New Mexico, on the set of a documentary called 14 Minutes from Earth, which is about Alan Eustace, who is a Google executive, started Google Search, made himself actually bought and then converted a spacesuit that, like, the astronauts wear in order to fly himself to the stratosphere on a balloon and then free fall. I think it's on Netflix right now. I co-directed it with some good friends. Well, I was the only person on set at the time, and because we were just capturing some footage, part of the development of it. And I was on the tarmac, and a truck didn't see me and ran over me, and I fractured my hip, my acetabulum, tore my labrum. It was very close to being paralyzed, and it was, the irony of it all is that it happened while I was doing something that at that point I had been working for 13 years in the industry, and I had just finished making my first feature film, which I had worked 10 years and tried to get made.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't do very well. It's called Lost in the Sun. It stars Josh Duhamel. I'm very proud of the film, but when I say it didn't do very well, people didn't really see it.
There's a ton of reasons why that could be.
Ton of reasons. And so I was confronted with this like real moment, this sort of like Rubicon in my life. And it's like, do I really love this enough of what I'm doing? And I had to confront like why I'm doing it. So it was a near-death experience that forced me to ask a lot of questions about my process, why I'm doing it, and quite frankly, what's my purpose here on the planet, given that tomorrow isn't really promised to any of us.
Wow.
So when I say that when you are creating commercials and when I'm creating commercials, I do it with a lot of perspective of it is important, but it is not in service of me. It is in service of something bigger than me. It's in service of moving people. It's in service of connecting with people. I really mean it. I really mean it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. That was, looking at you, I'd never know you were hit by a truck.
Didn't hit my face.
Oh, okay. And your brain seems to be working good. Thank you for this chat. And when people click on your name, it's going to take them to, where do you want it to go? TreyNelson.com.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. Hey, thank you so much, and continued success. I will put the 7-minute film up, and I'll put a link for people to donate. So if you love the conversation as much as Trey and I did, why don't you listeners click on that button and help these kids?
That'd be awesome.
Great. Nice chatting. Thank you.
See you, Jordan.
I'll see you, man.
Commercial Directing Film School's mission is to help filmmakers direct commercials professionally. With online courses and in-person boot camps, we demystify the process to get you to the next level, all taught by your accessible mentor, filmmaker Jordan Brady.
True Gentleman Industries. We make commercials.